So welcome everyone to Be Empowered show, or for our guest today, it might be better for me to say, good morning ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, this is your captain speaking, because that's exactly how Ron and I met. We met on an aeroplane on a flight between Dubai and Mauritius, and a set of circumstances which I would call synchronicity happened that led me to meeting our guest, Ron Kaufman. So welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Graham. It's a pleasure to reconnect with you here.
Yeah, I just want to tell everybody this story because in my book that I published just a few months ago, Ron, the first question I posed was in that book, which is called The Manifesto of Your Inspirational Mind. I posed this question: do you believe in synchronicity? And I want to explain this to you because you don't know this story, but on that, preceding that flight, my wife and Susanna and myself went to the Seychelles, and we stayed on Praslin Island in the Seychelles, and the service was unbelievable. Honestly, I didn't think this type of service existed anymore. And we went to this resort, and when we arrived, the manager of the resort came and welcomed us. We then went into the resort, and just about everybody that we had one-to-one contact with us remembered our names right throughout the 4 days. And then when we left, the manager came and he gave me this huge book. I don't know if you can see that. It's the story of the Constance Group.
Yes.
And you obviously know them because I know you do a lot of work in Mauritius, and that's where they're based.
That's right.
Now, there's something that really hit home to me during that time that we were at that resort. Their motto is inspired by passion, sorry.
Passion.
And it was really that holiday that really started inspiring me to create value for people in this whole realm of serving people. And that's basically led to this interview with you, which is during our first week of launching the Be Empowered show on iTunes.
Well, I'm honored to be one of your first guests, Graham.
Yeah, well, the amazing thing is, the very next trip I did was the flight you were on.
Yes.
So we were travelling down, and a lot of our guests probably don't know where Mauritius is, but it's the Seychelles is pretty much in line with between Dubai and Mauritius. So we go right smack bang over the island that I was staying on. So I called a few of the crew up, and I'm telling the story about the service at this place. And a lot of them know because we actually get a discount there, so a lot of the crew go there. So I was telling them how good it was, and we were looking down, watching the resort go under the nose. And the purser said to me, she said, oh, we have a guy on board today, first class passenger. His name's Ron Kaufman. And I think, from what I remember, they went and you gave them a copy of your book, which is, I just want to show you that. Is that right? Yep, it's the right way around.
That's so right. It's called Uplifting Service.
Amazing. And on that, somewhere on that book cover, it read like this. It says, Ron is known as the world's leading educator and motivator for uplifting customer service and building service cultures.
Yes. And
that is just an amazing story. You know, that I just see so much synchronicity in that, Ron, that it kind of staggers me, to be honest.
Isn't it funny, Graham, that we're still staggered by synchronicity when in fact all of life is happening connected to each other at the same time. Synchronicity is what's going on. It's just that we're becoming more open to and more aware of it.
Exactly. That's exactly what it is. And so, Ron, I know that you speak all over the world about service. You are involved in the culture. In fact, the whole culture of the country in Singapore revolves around your teaching. Can you tell us a little bit about your history with service, how you got into it maybe,
Sure.
and then leading through your time. I believe you're based in Singapore now, and you have a lot of input into that, not only that country, but also Singapore Airlines.
Yes, yes. I've been based here in Singapore now for the past 24 years. And the story of how I got here is actually in the beginning part of that book that you were just holding up. It actually started with my grandmother. She taught kindergarten for 40 years in New York City. And so to her, every single person was absolutely precious. And so when I was just a little boy, even 5 years old, I used to get to go to her kindergarten, and I watched this amazing grandmother of mine make everybody feel good. And she did it all day long, and she did it for the parents when they came to pick up their kids. And I really watched that as a role model, and I said, wow, she's so nice, she's so good, people love her so much. And what she was doing was service. But she didn't call it service, she called it love. And then as I grew up and I went to college, and I got very involved in a sport called Ultimate Frisbee. And in Ultimate Frisbee, I was the captain of the team at Brown University. And it's a fascinating game. I'm sure many of your viewers have heard about it. But one of the most interesting things is there are no referees, which means that the players themselves must take responsibility for discussing, agreeing, adjudicating, resolving whatever happens on the field. And that's possible because the very first rule of the game in Ultimate Frisbee is called the spirit of the game. In other words, the spirit of the game is to play. And yes, you can compete, you can want to win, but the spirit of the game is to play together. And so I got from my grandmother the idea of love, and then I got from Frisbee the idea of play. And then when I got involved in corporate work as I got older, I realized that adults also want to enjoy themselves. Adults also want to learn. They want to be able to engage with other people. And if we can all do it in an upbeat and uplifting mood, you know, it makes everything else more possible. Back in 1990, when the country of Singapore invited me here, it's because they had a problem. All the manufacturing was going to China, all the back office processing was going to India, and the economy of the country was going to be hollowed out. So they looked forward into the future, and they could see that Singapore's future was going to be based on service. So today, financial service, legal service, educational service, medical service, convention service, it's a service city. The population, however, had not been educated to really respond and be flexible and, you know, be proactive with customers. They'd been trained to go to work in factories. So back in 1990, the government realized we have to literally re-educate the entire country about what does it mean to be in service to someone else. Now, Singapore Airlines was already a fabulous case study of excellent service because for the airline, from day one, they were already competing internationally. Singapore is so small, there are no domestic flights. And so they had to achieve a very high standard right from the beginning of the airline, and they've done so ever since. And I've simply been privileged to be one of the people who's been able to help contribute to their ongoing success.
That's great. It's a really amazing story that you're tying service together with seeing the goodness in somebody. Because I do quite a lot of coaching, and basically what that coaching is, it's just enabling or helping people to see their own goodness and connecting with that. And that's it. It's really that simple.
Well, to see it, to believe in it, to recognize that it has a purpose, and then to put it into action. Because the action that any one of us can do in this world will necessarily touch other people. In fact, being alive is something that requires engaging with other people. And so to me, service is the thing that ties all of us together here on the planet. whether we're being served or we're serving others, it's the language that keeps everything connected.
Well, that what you're talking about there is now proven scientifically. You know, they know that the neocortex, that's the thinking brain, and then the middle brain is the limbic brain, that's the feeling brain. But then the third brain, right at the back here, that's where it's kind of becomes second nature to us, and that is done through action. So it has to go from thinking to feeling to action.
Action, right.
Then
and Graham, the definition of service that readers can find in the book, and I think you would found it already, is service is taking action to create value for someone else. So the whole idea that our brains are designed, our lives are designed to be in action, well, what's the purpose of the action? It's to serve other people.
When I read that definition of service that you have in your book, I said to myself, I've got to have Ron on, because it's so synchronized to what the message that I'm conveying on how people can empower themselves, basically.
Right.
So, Ron, what is it that inspired you to get involved with the Singapore government? And I mean, that's a long time ago now, and I mean, Singapore is known as a service community all over the world, so you've been really the backbone behind that.
Well, thank you for the compliment, Graham. I'm one of many, many people who have been able to make a contribution. And I continue to make a contribution. In fact, I was just in conversation recently with the Civil Service College. The entire government of the country of Singapore has more than 100,000 employees, and they're constantly looking at how to raise service levels for citizens, for visitors, for employers, and I have the privilege of being able to work with them on their service improvement projects. Singapore is an interesting place. It's an island. It's multi-ethnic. It's multi-religious, it's multi-racial, and yet it gets along. And it gets along very well with everybody inside. It's in a neighborhood surrounded by some very large countries like Malaysia and Indonesia. And sometimes, relations in the neighborhood of ASEAN or Asia Pacific can be a little bit tense. So here's this tiny little country called Singapore that is surrounded by so much activity that's going on. And what do they need? They need friends. They need to be helpful to other countries. They need to be valuable to other people in other parts of the world, even to make a living, because there's no agriculture here, it's too small. There's no oil reserves here, it's too small. And yet the country has thrived, and it's done very well by focusing on how to create more value for the neighbors, for other industries, for customers in other parts of the world, for tourists when they come to visit. And so the role model that Singapore is, to me, it's like a small, iconic case study of what we should be doing on the whole planet. Because the whole planet is multi-ethnic, multi-religious, multi-racial, and we need to get along.
That's good. Ron, is there an order to it? Because I read somewhere in your material is that you say focus your attention on other people first, then take action to create value. What's the significance of that?
Well, some people walk around in life with a question in their mind, which is, what's in it for me? How do I get more? How do I make more? How do I get what I want? And there's a lot of advertising that encourages that point of view, but there's another way of living, which is to actually be in the world, not focused on what's in it for me, but meeting people and thinking to yourself, what can I do for you? How can I help? How can I assist? How can I support? Now here's the interesting reason why I think it makes sense to put that first. Because when you make the choice to do something beneficial for someone else, the moment you make that choice, your own energy level goes up. Your own personal power, if you will, goes up. Because you're focusing on someone else's needs, someone's concerns, and you need energy for that. You need creativity for that. You need some passion for that. And so those things arise in your own body, in your own being. Your brain switches into gear, which means that you're actually getting a benefit even before the other person that you're going to serve starts to experience the positive results. So I say to people, you know, if you're feeling selfish or you want to get more for yourself, just go out and do something nice for someone else, because the first person who'll get the benefit will actually be you.
Mm. And how do you find this message goes down in a world that is so egotistical and so selfish, so self-centered
Well,
at
that's a
times?
very good question, Graham. When I'm teaching, as you know, I do with client organizations all over the world, and it's in every industry, and our material is now in 15 different languages. And you know, normally by the time we get called in, it's to a company that has at least 1,000 employees. They've been doing customer service training for years, but it isn't really producing a sustainable, positive result. And so they find us, and what we specialize in is helping an organization build a culture of uplifting service, where the service inside the company is as good as the service we provide outside the company, and both of them are getting stronger and stronger. But this particular point of view about not doing what's in it for me, but instead doing what can I do for you, I only introduce that at the very end of the program. Because before you get to the point where you want to ask people to make that fundamental shift in way of thinking or way of being, there's some other education that needs to occur. Very, very few people have reached adulthood and have ever taken a good class or a good course on the fundamental principles of service. Unfortunately, it's not taught in our school system, and it should be to children. It's hardly ever addressed in the university system, except for MBAs in the area of services marketing. But we're all in professional lives serving each other and don't even have the fundamental principles. So I always start the day by teaching the fundamental principles of service, and then building on top of that an understanding of how do you build a culture of service. And then at the end of the day, we can say, you know, this really comes down to a personal decision. What's in it for me, or what can I do for you?
So what is it that really shifts somebody? You know, like when you're talking to a large group, what's kind of the key that makes it tilt in favour of doing things for other people?
Right, that's a good question. It really goes back to the definition that I shared with you earlier, which is service is taking action to create value for someone else. And I always say the most important part of that simple sentence is not the action you take, it's the someone else that you're serving. Because if you want to be successful, you have to start with someone else, figure out what it is that they value, then you can decide on the action that you're going to take on their behalf. Right? So the focus needs to be other focused from the very beginning if you're going to succeed in service.
You know, one of the things that we have in common is we spend an awful lot of time in travelling in an aeroplane.
Yeah.
And I travel all over the world. I eat at all types of restaurants. And one of the things that really, really annoys me is this kind of performance orientation with service. You know, so you sit down for a meal and you just get the feeling they're waiting for you to finish. And sometimes, you know, you'll get up to get a bit more breakfast and you come back and your plate's gone. Have you ever experienced that? Or,
yeah.
You know,
See,
you finish eating.
People get trained, Graham, in procedures.
Yeah.
They get trained in process and in checklists. Certainly as a pilot, you understand the importance of that. And as a pilot, let me be clear, when you're flying and I'm your passenger, I don't really want Graham Hopkins to exercise a lot of creative thinking. Yeah, I want you to do what it is that is in the procedure because it's there for a good reason. But when you have a service situation, like let's say you're flying and there's turbulence, or let's say you're on the ground and there is an aircraft delay, or let's say you've landed but you can't get to the gate yet, you know, you could just follow procedure and say, ladies and gentlemen, buckle up. Or ladies and gentlemen, we have to wait another 10 minutes. Or ladies and gentlemen, it'll be another 15 minutes before we get to the gate. And that would adequately follow procedure, but it would not be good service. Because what you really want to do instead is think about who is the someone else on my aircraft, or in the case of the waiter, who is that someone else that's having breakfast? And what can I do? What can I say? How can I make contact with that person in a way that they will appreciate and value?
Well, you know, coming back to your statement about a pilot, what I believe the difference between a good pilot and the average pilot is creativity, because you know it's not something the passengers see, but a creative thinker is always looking ahead.
Yep.
Um, you know, for instance, let's take a simple case. You know, you could have another aircraft passing 1,000 foot overhead, and you look down and you notice there's no wind. This is a typical scenario to pick up wake turbulence. So if you've got a A380 going over the top and you've got 4 big engines creating that turbulence that's going to sink down and hit your aircraft, then you're going to have the seatbelt sign on before it even happens.
Correct.
So
correct.
Even though we stay within the bounds of the rules that are in place, still creativity is what makes somebody stand out.
Right. Right. And you know, if you really wanted to get creative, you could even say to people, assuming it's not nighttime and they're sleeping, ladies and gentlemen, excuse me, this is the captain. You'll notice that I've put on the seatbelt sign. We have one of our beautiful Emirates Airbus A380s that will be passing overhead shortly in the appropriate distance, but you may feel a little bit of turbulence coming from that, and I just want to make sure that you're all safe and sound. You know, I've never had a pilot say that. And I think that, you know, the passengers would say, this is amazing. Wow, you know, I'm more aware of the fact that I'm flying and what it is that's going on.
The reason we don't make PAs like that is because of the 3 classes, and a lot of the first class passengers are asleep. So
well, there you go. There you go.
That's that's the reason.
Yeah.
But
understood.
You know, getting back to what I was saying, creativity is also the key to service, whether it be in a restaurant or anywhere else, I would imagine. Can you add to that?
Well, creativity is where you really have the opportunity to do the value added. So if you take a waiter, for example, who is well trained and is going to follow the procedure, you know, of bringing people to the table, presenting the menu, taking the orders, delivering the food, clearing the plate, collecting the money. I mean, it's very procedural, yeah? But if the waiter takes the time to find out who is that particular customer, then he might learn that actually it's 2 people negotiating a contract, and they would like a quiet table. But then the very next person may come in, and it's a tourist. And they want to know about everything, and they want to talk to the waiter, and they want interaction. You could have a couple that comes in and they're on a date. And then as the waiter, how could you serve them so they feel good about each other, right? You can use your creativity to make that happen. What if the next customer comes in and it's a mother with a young child? So if the waiter just follows the procedure with no creativity, you're very likely to have 4 different customers who, well, they got served, but none of them would say it was great service. But if the waiter is more creative about understanding who is that someone else and what action can I take that will create value for them, then you can have a real win-win with additional service value add.
And Ron, tell me about, because I know you spend a lot of time down in Mauritius, what is it you do down there?
Well, thanks for asking. I'll give you an example. There's a very large hospitality firm there called, used to be called Naiad Resorts, and it was about 3.5 star, and they rebranded to a completely new name called Lux Resorts. And, you know, they repainted and they got a new logo, but they had to get the service from 3.5 to 5 star and keep it there. And so they used our Up Your Service education program and culture building program, and they're now very successfully at 5 star with very high room rates and very high occupancy and you know, an impeccable TripAdvisor score and very high rankings in the tour operator world. Another group that we've been working with in Mauritius is the national airline. So Air Mauritius used to be rated as a 3-star airline, and there are 147 airlines in the world, Graham, that are rated 3-star, and they decided to take on the challenge of becoming a 4-star airline in 24 months. And they brought us in, and they use our educational program and our culture building activities for the entire company, 2,500 people, and I was there on my most recent trip because Skytrax has just awarded Air Mauritius 4-star ranking. So they're now right up there with Etihad and with Emirates, which is also considered a 4-star airline, although I will say that I'm counting on Emirates to reach 5-star sometime very soon.
Excellent. Just one thing I noticed was that the resort that I mentioned that we stayed in is the Constance Group, and that's also Mauritius. So my question is, what is it in the water down there that you guys are drinking?
I don't know about the water, but I can tell you that the head of the entire Constance Group Learning and Development function was actually in my program in Mauritius just 2 days ago, and it was a delight to meet them. You know, I think it's not so much what's in the water, but let's look at what's in the people. So the country of Mauritius is another island, multi-ethnic, multiracial, multi-religious, and yet they get along. So their success is about creating value together as a community, but then also with all of the people who come to visit them. So they have a very large port industry there where you get large cruise ships coming in, and of course hospitality is a big industry, and also now financial, trust, and legal services has become much larger in the country of Mauritius.
It's a wonderful story. Ron, you make this statement, service is the currency that keeps the world together.
That's right.
Can you tell me more about that? That sounds like an interesting statement.
Well, it actually says service is the currency that keeps the economy moving. Okay. I serve you in one capacity, you serve me in another. When either of us gets better, the amount of value goes up. When both of us get better, then there's tremendous value added. When everybody steps up to deliver a higher level of service, then the whole world functions more smoothly and more effectively for us all.
Excellent. And really, that's what I'm endeavouring to do with this. It's right. It's a show to bring people on who can express what they're doing to add value to other people. That's basically what
I just want to say something to you, Graham, to acknowledge and congratulate you about this as we wrap up our call. You know, the Be Empowered group, you're taking a stand. You're making a commitment that says that each and every person who's watching this interview or that learns about you or gets a copy of your great book, I mean, you have the opportunity, but you also have the responsibility to participate in the world, to contribute in the world that makes the world a better place. I mean, we all know from reading the newspaper and looking at the media that this is a challenging time for the planet, whether it's climate change, whether it's political conflict, you know, whatever it is. But that doesn't mean that you can just sit and watch the news and go, oh, what a terrible world. Because the way each and every person lives their lives does make a difference. It may not make a huge difference, but it makes a difference to someone, to the other people that you're in touch with in your life. So if you're watching this interview, thank you for taking responsibility and living up to your potential. Be empowered.
Yeah, that's excellent. Ron, before we wrap it up, you put out a blog that I want to just touch on briefly. You say there's a difference between empathy and compassion. Mm-hmm. Can you just expand on that just briefly?
Yeah, I think genuine empathy means that you really understand what's going on for another person. You understand the background, you can understand their culture, their situation, their feelings, how they got that way, what they're concerned about, what they want. I mean, that's real empathy when you fully understand another person. But that's extremely rare. It's very difficult to actually get empathy at that level of understanding because we're so different. We come from different backgrounds. We have different issues and concerns. But compassion is something that any human being can show to any other being at any time, whether or not you actually understand their situation. So to say that, you know, I aim for absolute empathy with other people, that's an impossible to achieve. But if I say I'm committed to exercising compassion in the world, then there's nobody who I couldn't care about. There is nobody that I couldn't take an action to let them know that they matter to me and how they feel matters, and then I'm willing to do something to help them.
Excellent. Ron, I don't know how to thank you for, I mean, you're speaking to thousands at one time, and you've taken the time to speak to little old me just to kick off my show.
Well, I I don't think of you as little old you, Graham. I think of you as great big you, because you are empowered.
I really appreciate it, Ron. Can you just give a wrap up on where people can buy your book,
Sure.
which is, well, I showed you before, Uplifting Service, and where people can contact you, businesses if they're interested in contacting you?
Well, the name of our company is upyourservice.com. Upyourservice.com. And so if people go to the website, they'll be able to find the entire first section of the book, which you can download for free. You'll find a lot of video clips. You'll find our blog. You'll find a library with more than 200 articles. You can also find me on YouTube, where we've got over 200 video clips of conferences that I've done and speeches and interviews. This one, for example, will be coming up on YouTube soon. And all of these materials are made available in the world to uplift the spirit of service, the practice of service, and the quality of service everywhere in the world.
Yeah. Sometimes I mention your motto to the flight attendants, and it's like a penny drops. It kind of, you can see it.
Very
very
good.
powerful.
Very good.
Very, very powerful.
Excellent.
So thanks everybody for joining the Be Empowered show. I'm your host, Graham Hopkins. Before we go, I was wondering if I could ask you guys to do me a favour, and that is to leave a review on iTunes, because this is a new show, and we'd like to up the rating so that this important message is going out to many people. We've been very fortunate. In the first week, we've had some great guests like Ron. And if you'd like to learn more about the concepts that Ron and I have shared today, like feeling more connected, being in the flow, the subject of service, it's all there in my book. You can go to Amazon and download the Manifesto of Your Inspirational Mind, or you can go to my website, www.beempoweredgroup.com, and download a free ebook which is called Know Your True Value and Worth. So,
nice.
On behalf of Ron Kaufman and your host Graham Hopkins, we wish every one of you a wonderful future of freedom, peace, abundance, and service to each other. Remember, change your energy, change your life. Thank you.
Thank you, Graham.
Oops, just got to find the stop button here. Where's it gone? Lost my mouse.